Welcome back to the pod. We're so excited for today.
Week 2.
Episode 2.
Episode 2, week 2. It's weekly, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
weekly.
There we go. Week 2. I got it right.
We're on
I got it
board
right.
here.
Yeah.
By the way, that cup literally gives me PTSD.
What's wrong with this cup?
That's the cup I did before my second laparoscopic surgery when they made me prepare my colon. What is it called? Colonoscopy. As if I was getting that. And they gave me those packets of, what is it called? The stuff that cleans you out. And it tasted so bad.
The poop juice.
The poop juice.
Okay.
I literally haven't been able to use that cup because it that was so bad. I should have known that was about to be a really bad.
Thank you
bad
for
time.
reminding me that this was a poop juice cup as I drink out of it.
You're welcome. At least you're getting use out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, today we're going to talk about how the heck we have dealt with 3+ years of negatives and constantly being told not yet. I don't like the thought of being told no, because I don't think it is a no. I think it's simply a not yet.
I've never thought of it as a no. And I think that's what we'll probably talk through is the differences of how we've seen these struggles happen, because Addie and I certainly, although we experienced the same moments, obviously living together, we, I guess, perceive it differently. So.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. But I think this is also like the male brain versus female brain. I mean, I know every personality is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, like, when I've talked to some of my friends who've struggled, like, some of them are like, oh, yeah, my husband does that too. Mm-hmm. And then other people are like, no, my husband's not like that at all. So I think part of it is male versus female. Part of it's personality.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that, I wanted to talk about today is actually when I talk to other guys, which I get to do less frequently as you, because, you're constantly talking to a community of women like that. So it's less frequent for me. When I do, it's like, all the lights click and it's like, oh, it's not just me. Like, they really are sometimes just different dynamics between women and men going on here. And that makes me feel better. So
I think that's in all aspects too.
Yeah.
Like yesterday we were hanging out with our friends and we were talking about music choices.
Yeah, it was just like Addie had always didn't like my choices. I didn't like her workout choices. And then we talked to the couple and it was like, oh, this is really just like a difference between men and women. For the most part, obviously there are exceptions and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we can just start us out with okay, we've been trying to conceive for over 3 years. April was our 3 years of trying. We are onward into year 4 now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy to think that it's almost June and July was the month we got pregnant 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And those first few months, of course, it was kind of, I don't know, it was just like a very hopeful time and we didn't think anything was wrong. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, when we conceived, I thought I was going to get pregnant very quickly after. Mm-hmm. Did you? When
you first got pregnant?
Yeah. And then
miscarried. Yeah. Because it was like, why not? She had just got pregnant, and a miscarriage is a really frequent thing, as we talked about last week. It's like 25% in the first 6 weeks, or is it more? I don't know. You'd have to tell me.
It's 1 in 4 women have miscarriages. I don't think that's
y'all can Google the statistics, but the point is that it's very frequent. So I was like, this is a tragic but normal thing. So therefore, we're gonna be able to do this again.
It's so funny, again, this is such an example of our brains working so differently. And there's a girl I know. She's one of my friends. And she has 2 babies, was trying for number 3, miscarried, and then got pregnant with number 4. And when she talks about it, she's like, well, statistically speaking, it was my time to miscarry. If it's 1 in 4, whatever. And my brain, I'm just like, wait, what? I would never have that thought process.
Yeah.
I feel like that's such a critical thinking, I don't know, or analytical thinking, maybe that's the right word.
And it's something, as we've talked about different approaches we've had to deal with these negatives, that's a big way I deal with it, right? How we communicate is, I look at stuff and I go statistics. I say, okay, in this next round of treatment, the doctor said it takes, 3 tries and your percentages go up. And I just love that stuff. And it just gives me comfort, or it just lets me focus on the numbers and depersonalize, which helps me, but it's completely different for you.
So, I couldn't even be more different than that. I don't think I ever look at okay, we've been trying this long, so our statistics are higher or lower, or after my surgery, our statistics are higher or lower. Because like every single cycle is such an emotional roller coaster that it's almost like I'm just getting through each day. It's not really thinking super long term like that, or what. Anyways, okay, so different ways we've dealt with the negatives, cycle after cycle. I think our biggest, one of the biggest ones has been therapy.
Well, yeah, because what we just described there was we communicate so differently. And so any couple needs, in the beginning of their marriage, to figure out how they communicate best with their spouse because it's a new language. I mean, people are coming from different backgrounds. Maybe some people live together for longer or whatever it may be, right? Had longer relationships, short relationships before they get married. Eventually, though, things come up and you have to learn how to communicate difficult things, especially. And that's where therapy, I think, really helped us to do that.
And we recently found a new therapist when we moved to the Dallas, Texas area, and he's been just incredible. I mean, he really is so good at what he does. And something he's brought up multiple times is family origins. And I think this is so interesting because a lot of times, the way we communicate, the way we act, the way we perceive things is all about how we grew up and how we saw our parents and our families perceive things. And then, different relationships, they all shape, like those experiences all shape you into who you are and how you act. And I've never really thought about that. And like our family origins are so different, and like no family's perfect. No parents know exactly how to act, what to do. We can all try our best. And that was another thing that was really reassuring because I was like, there are some things that I don't want us to bring over to our children eventually. But he literally was like, Addie, you can try as hard as you can, but there are going to be things you mess up with. There are going to be things your kids are going to get from you that you may not necessarily like. And I think that's kind of reassuring though too. And also I feel like it makes me have a lot of grace towards my parents and my family as well, where it's like, they did the best with the tools they had.
Right. And so the family of origin thing that came up in therapy, that's exactly it. It's not that it excuses any kind of behavior, like when talking about you and I, but it helps us recognize it in each other and say, at least I have an understanding of why Eddie's might be feeling this way. And it helps me digest it, depersonalize, and kind of break away from
depersonalize.
Exactly. Break away from that.
So important. Yeah. So with therapy for us, Stephen and I have both gone to therapy before we ever met.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're very strong, what is it called? Like, we love therapy.
From advocates, believers.
Yeah, advocates. Yeah, we love therapy. I think everyone should go to therapy. I think every couple should go to therapy.
It's just the greatest way to get a third-party perspective on what's going on in your life because you in the moment can't necessarily do it. Talking to friends can be helpful. That's almost a form of therapy, but at the same time, they're more intermingled into your life. So it's like really nice to just third-party, hey, I'm going to spit out this is my data brain, I'm going to spit out some information for you. You help me process it from a third party where it's like none of my biases are taken in.
Right. And I know I've openly shared on social media my how we go to therapy, how we go to couples therapy. And every single time, without a doubt, I will get messages in my DMs saying, is y'all's marriage that bad that you're going to therapy?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not why we're going to therapy.
It's just the wrong perspective on it, in my opinion, right?
I agree.
It's like therapy is not, if you're going to therapy retroactively, right? It's just, I go there with a blow up or I'm going because of XYZ. Sure, maybe you could see it that way, but I mean, we go when things are going great proactively. Like you could set like a monthly touch base and I've just learned more about you through it. And, of course you can do that over dinner and things like that, but I learned more about maybe some of the struggles in our relationship and how we can just talk better and get better at it. So I love therapy. I feel like it's the greatest thing for relationships, for personal development. It really just, it helps. So.
And I've opened up a lot about this, but whenever I first started going to therapy as a married couple was my miscarriage, but I waited too long. I did do it what's the word?
Retroactively? Instead of proactively.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
I did do it retroactively. Like I waited months because, again, I kind of pushed it all down and was like, yeah, it's fine, it's whatever. And then it became to a point where, like, I was blowing up at you for these smallest things.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was almost like I would, like, black out and be, like, just angry and annoyed. And then I would think about it the next day, and I was like, why did I just get mad over that?
Yeah. And so it's fine to use it retroactively, right? You see something, it's like, okay, go. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, why wouldn't you want to do that? Like, I haven't come into marriage, or maybe you do come into marriage, but it's quickly, the facade has gone away where we're not, we're new to it. Like, you're new to marriage. Every couple who does their first marriage is new to marriage by definition.
And if you've had multiple marriages, you're new to that person.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So why would you expect to be an expert at it? I think it's just helpful in that sense. It's almost just like business, whatever, coaching, sports. Like, you're not going to be an expert at something when you first start. So it really helps lay the foundation for it.
So we go to couples therapy and we go to individual therapy. I think the most important thing about going to therapy, and I know this can be really exhausting to do, but make sure you find a therapist you really like, you really connect with, that, you know, it also, like, specializes and feels comfortable that they can help you with what you're going through. You know, a lot of part of therapy for me is trying to conceive journey and the anxiety and depression spouts I go through during this, and, you know, the communication we have to work on and the differences we have.
Yeah.
And I've gone through therapists, and I think that's okay. You have to shop around. It's kind of like finding a good doctor. And, you know, with trying to conceive, like, you have to find one that lines up with you morally, that wants to support you, that, you know, you feel listened to and seen, that's going to go to bat for you, advocate for you. Like, if you are seeing a therapist right now, I want to give you permission. If you are not feeling seen or heard, and this goes for a doctor, this goes for everything. If you are seeing someone that does not see you, does not hear for you, does not go to bat for you, and you are leaving those therapy sessions not feeling better, or not knowing tools that you can start using and working on, leave.
Yeah.
Go find someone else. I know it can be exhausting. I know it can be hard to do, but it is so worth it when you find someone. And I know for us, I've gone through spouts of anxiety and depression, and, you know, some have been worse than others where it's been like months at a time. And Stephen will be like, Addie, it's time to go back to therapy. And I will be like, I can't even find a therapist. Like, I'm too drained. I'm too exhausted. It gives me anxiety looking for it. And, like, you kind of just think, oh, no one's, you know, I'm not going to find a good one. What's the point? And then he will be like, okay, well, I'm going to look for you.
Yeah.
And then he'll send me them and kind of, like, stay on top of me about it, which is funny because I feel like I'm normally the one that's telling you, like, do this, do that, and staying on top of you about it, which I've really appreciated when you've done that. Like, you've really stepped up and helped out a lot.
You're welcome.
I know, thank you.
But yeah, you sometimes have to be there for someone to do it when, like, it's tough like that. But finding the right therapist, just to emphasize, I think the most important part is they don't have to have the same worldview as you, but they do need to share some of your core beliefs, right? Because the advice they give is going to drastically differ depending on that worldview, right? You know, Addie and I both come from, like, a Christian Catholic background, so it's probably not going to make sense for us to go to someone that, like, doesn't have that understanding of that worldview, because they're going to give you different advice. They're going to give you different beliefs. So, you know, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one, but I found that to be really helpful, is to align on that. Which probably leads into, like, the next thing that we've leveraged, or a big part of how we've dealt with the negatives, which is our faith.
Our faith.
And it's developed over time, right? It's really, I mean, you're going to share differences here, but it's up and down when, you know, sometimes we can treat God as, I can treat God, let me speak for myself, as like a gumball machine. And, like, through this experience, it's definitely just like, okay, well, why? Like, I believe if God wanted to, could happen today, you know, it could anytime it wants. So it's like those questions of why you kind of have to combat with, at least on my side.
Yeah. And I know for us, like, we weren't going to church when we first got married, like, not actively. So Stephen and I are Catholic, and we are practicing Catholics as of right, like, now.
Ups and downs. Like, you know, I was at a point where it was daily mass for a while, for a year or so, and then it's like, you know, where it's skyrocketing, and then it's kind of like a lull where the world just takes over your job or whatever, and it's just, you forget about it and you place it to the side. And you know?
Yeah, and I want to preface this, as we share about our faith and as we share about the ups and downs we're going through, in no way are we saying what we're doing is better than what you're doing, or you should be doing X, Y, and Z like us. We're simply sharing our experiences and what we're going through. I feel like a lot, when I open up and share about how I'm Catholic, a lot of times I'll get messages and feedback from people saying that, they think I'm better than them because this is what I'm doing, and that's not what I'm saying at all. At all. I'm simply just sharing this is my faith. These are the struggles I've been through, and this is what we believe with our faith, and here we are. So, when we first got married, we got married in the Catholic Church, and we were not going to church every Sunday. And the miscarriage happened, and I remember we hadn't been to church in a while, maybe since our wedding. I don't know. I can't remember. But when the miscarriage happened, Stephen, you were the one that was like, we should go to church. So the miscarriage happened on a Wednesday night / Thursday, and it was that Sunday, and Stephen was like, we should go to church. And I was like, I don't want to go to church. I was angry at God. I was like, why am I going to go to church? He just took the greatest gift I could have ever received away from me. When in reality, I know that's not necessarily true, but I really, really struggled. But I'm so grateful that you did make me go to church, because when I sat in Mass that day, they talked about hope so much. And I'll never forget, we got in the car after and we looked at each other, and we never really do this. We were like, was there a word that stuck out to you a lot during Mass? And we both were like, yeah, the word hope. Yeah. It just stuck out so much, in the readings, in the homily, everything. It just kept coming up. And I was like, wow, I that was a time where I literally felt like God was talking to me. And I know sometimes, especially if you're Catholic and you're going to Mass, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're getting this message that's speaking to you. But that day, and there have been multiple days since where I've gone to Mass where I'm like, okay, God, you are literally speaking to me. I needed to hear this. And, since our miscarriage, we've had ups and downs too with our faith. And there have been times, I always get asked, how do you still believe in God? How do you still go worship God? How do you still pray to God after all these struggles, all these years? If he could, but he's not, how are you okay with that? And my best, the best thing I can say is, I've been through this journey with God, and I've been through this journey without God. Without God, I was angry. I was jealous. I was just a mean person. But with God, I've had this blanket of peace and just consistent hope that has just filled me through every single battle, every single no, every single not yet, every single diagnosis, everything. Where without God, I didn't have that hope. I didn't have that peace. Yeah. But with him, I have it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so Addie and I come from probably a different background with this, right? She does a much better job on, I think, prayer and things of that nature, whereas I kind of love to dig in more to theology and read that stuff. But the main thing that benefited me, right, so she got all that hope is just the community of it. One was being able to just be around other people that believe. And then two, it's to recognize in these moments, right, that God is there for people that are struggling and for people that aren't perfect. And so you're expressing exactly that, right? Where it's you're angry, you're all these things. And it's people going to Mass, to church, aren't going there because they're already these perfect people. Certainly not. It's the exact opposite. You're going there because you are in need of God, because without him, all that stuff comes up. That kind of is the human nature just bubbling out, and you kind of need to turn to God to transform yourself in the ways that you're talking about there. So it was super helpful for me. And then beyond just Mass, I think Scripture is really important. Us Catholics aren't really good at reading Scripture. It's not something that I've seen with my own friends or anything. I mean, I went to Catholic school my entire life, so it's but the exact same principle where it's you hear that message, you open up the book and you're just oh yeah, God is definitely talking to me.
I can tell you how many times I've had a negative pregnancy test. The morning, wake up, negative pregnancy test, or my period happens. And then I get I don't want to say this whisper, because I'm not someone who, I don't think I've ever heard God talk to me. Like, I've felt it, but I've never like been like, oh, that was God's voice. And I know there's some people out there that have had those experiences. I haven't. But I would just like, I don't know, feel this need to go open up a devotional. I don't really read the Bible. I should get into it. But I've like had a hard time understanding. Maybe I should read like the Bible for kids or something. I don't know.
There's a lot of great options out there.
Yeah. But I would like go open my devotional, and it would be like speaking to me.
Yeah.
Like it would be about Sarah or about Rebecca or, one of these women who have struggled with trying to conceive, that God allowed those stories in the Bible. He could have easily said, we're not going to talk about this, but he allowed those stories to be talked about in the Bible. And I think that is so powerful and such a sense of hope, because even with those stories, when you look at Sarah, right, who had a baby at 90, which, was she actually 90? I don't know. Time may have been a little bit different then. Who knows how they counted years. But anyways, when you look at Sarah, who had a baby at 90 years old, and then you see who her baby was, it was like, it was like God had a plan. That was meant to be. That was very important that specific child landed in their hands at that time. And I think about those things a lot, like as we're being told, no, not yet, it's not our time. I'm like, God has such a specific child and plan and hopefully siblings he gives us that it's all, like, I know in like 20, 30 years from now, we will look back and it'll all make sense.
Yeah, that's what it's been like throughout my entire life, is when I have those doubts, it comes back and I'm like, oh, wow, I see kind of the hand. But you can only get there, unfortunately, like once you're past it and you look back and you allow that. But
yeah, like think about people you've dated. Right? It's like people...
Where are we going here?
Think of people you dated. Like, I think about this a lot and how they didn't work out. And like some of those people, I was like, oh, I think I see forever with you. Yeah. And they didn't work out for particular reasons. And I look at those people and the situation we're going through, I was like, that would have been a freaking dumpster fire if I was still with that person, and that, because like we didn't handle conflict well, or they ran away when things got hard, or whatever it was. And it's like, everything works out for a specific reason. And I remember someone messaged me when I was talking about this on Instagram one day, and someone was like, I always think about, my future spouse to my child, or the future people they're going to impact in their lives, or like their roommates or their friends. Those friends are only going to be theirs, and that spouse is only going to be theirs if they are born at a certain time. Or like, the people they're going to impact. Who knows? They may save the world. We may have a child that saves the world.
Let's not go too far, but yeah.
They'll save our world.
I think God works in the ordinary, is what you're describing. That's how I always put it, right? It's like, people are always looking for these big signs. It's like, well, look at the smaller things, like who he puts in your life at when, and all those things. And I think, if you're not seeing God in your life, you might start to, if you start to just like seriously take some time to look at those different pieces. Totally.
Yeah. Well.
What else?
Next, the friends.
Yeah. So, so far what? Therapy was a big success. Through therapy, learning each other's communication skills. Our faith and going in that was helpful to come over these negatives. And
that's a journey. Faith is a journey. Like, it's never, I don't think I'm ever going to get to a point where like, I got it all, we're good.
Well, if you do, you've already gone astray, right? The whole point is to rely on God for your daily graces, right? So, it definitely is a journey, whether it's fertility stuff or whatever. It's just, absolutely, you have to, it's daily.
Something you have to work on, show up for.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, friends are, I think, the next big one.
And this is very different for us.
Yeah, like, how I talk with my guy friends about it is just, and I don't really like to focus on it, truthfully. Some of them ask me how things are going, and like, I'm happy to share then, but it's not something that I bring up in conversation. However, through Addie, it's been great to find other people that are going through the same thing, because then it is a little bit, for me, easier to just open up, talk about it, and like, have a conversation where everyone has experienced the same things and you can like share about it.
Yeah, that was cool. When we recently went to Mexico, we were with two other couples that also struggling to get pregnant, both of them doing IVF. They're actually both pregnant now, which is really exciting. We're so excited for them. But, Stephen got to talk to the husbands
Yeah.
about their struggles and what they've been through. And, IVF isn't something Stephen and I may never do, and they were so understanding of that. And I don't know, it was just really cool.
It was just mutual respect both ways.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so important, mutual respect. Like mutual respect all across the board. And, I have found that some of my friendships and relationships have really flourished and thrived, as we've gone through infertility, and they've like been there, and it's just made me cherish them so deeply. Like friends that are not struggling. Like I have a friend who gets pregnant the first time she tries, every time.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, very awesome. Like jealous.
Yeah.
But, she has been by my side since day one. Like always asking how I am, how I'm feeling. Like she'll always listen to me when I'm talking about everything I'm feeling in my 2-week wait. She always hypes me up, and she's always there for me. She's never like, no, Addie, this isn't the cycle of like you're not pregnant, but she's always there and listening.
I think this is a really important part also to highlight here is that the way that her friend reacts to her in that dynamic is something that I'm not good at doing and I likely won't do, and that's okay, and that's why this is such an important pillar of like going through any type of grief or whatever, right? Usually women and men communicate differently, so yes, you need to support your spouse, and I need to be figuring out ways to communicate with you, but at the same time it's not going to be in the same way maybe that another woman can communicate and
Absolutely.
like, and like you said, like hype you up or do whatever. It's like it's just a different way we talk, different way we think, and so it's not an either or, it's a both and, right? It's like you want both of those things in your life to prop you up.
Right. And, so many couples suffer in silence. So many couples do not open up to friends or family about their struggles. And I get it. Like, I really do understand it, because, that opens the doors to a lot of unsolicited advice. And people, maybe even dismissing your feelings around it. Like, we've felt that way. But I mean, you said, like, a lot of people think that, well, you're not at the year mark, or it hasn't been long enough. That maybe that's why they're feeling that way. But
yeah, you never know some people's background. But to your point, I was shocked. This just came into my head back when we were living in Virginia. I was golfing with a couple guys every day, and I just made some good friends out there through golf. And, one day I don't know how it came up, but it did come up, and I shared about it. And it just turned out that they had experienced the same thing, and now I have like 3 kids, and like we really were able to connect and relate over that. So it's like, it's magical what will happen when you find some friends and you share with them and you're open about it.
Yeah, and that was super interesting for me too, because even like my parents' generation, which is a little more like hush hush about it, and like we don't talk about miscarriages, we don't talk about these types of things, like as I clearly was like sharing on the internet for anyone and everyone to listen to and hear me talk about, and then my mom started, like my mom at first, she was like, you're going to share about that stuff? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to share about this stuff. And you know why I shared about it? I get asked all the time, like, when did you learn that, like, or when did you start to open up about it? I was already sharing my daily life. Like, part of my job was social media. Right. So it wasn't out of the blue. But whenever I did not share when we were first starting to try to conceive. Like April, May, June, July, I wasn't sharing about like that. I was just sharing about other pieces of our life. Because I just assumed we were going to get pregnant, and then I would announce that we're pregnant, and then share my pregnancy journey, you know? And obviously it didn't happen like that. And when I had my miscarriage, it was nearly impossible for me to show up on social media and not share such a huge piece of our life. Like, it felt like I wasn't being authentic. It felt like I was, like, lying. Because I really do look at, like, every single person that follows me on social media as a friend. Like, we're a community, you know? So I was like, this feels really weird not to. And also, when the miscarriage happened, I was looking on social media all over the place for people who were going through the hard. I saw a lot of people who had their rainbows and a lot of people who were over on the other side, but I didn't find a lot of people going through the hard. Now, I didn't actually think I was going to go through the hard as long as we are and still be on this journey. But I knew that if I was struggling, there were other women struggling. So I wanted to be a voice for that community as well. I honestly, when I started sharing, I did not think that like I was going to grow as much as I did. I mean, I didn't realize how many women out there struggle, honestly. I mean, I know, and I've only reached like not even near as many women that actually struggle or go through these things, you know?
Yeah.
So it's been wild. And I have found like it's all like getting on social media is kind of like a therapy for me.
Yeah, and exactly. And you don't have to be the sharer of it, right? So I think what you're describing is for you, yes, you're the sharer, but I also think that from what I see, you're watching other people that are going through similar struggles, and so you can connect. But sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's, I don't know, sometimes I feel like with me showing up and sharing every single day, and like if I'm only looking at other women who are going through it, it can kind of be hard because it's just like, it's heavy. It's a lot. So
right,
sometimes I'm like, I do want to go see like, that's why it's like to have a good array of different things
yeah,
to
because
share.
you're doing it every day. But I think for most people out there who maybe aren't
Right,
doing this, an online community or some communities just to share with where you have other people who've gone through experiences is a great outlet.
Which I'd like to touch on this. Okay. There are quite a few online communities out there that I have found, like when we first started struggling to conceive and I was buying different devices and getting in different groups and kind of seeing these different, what's the word? Like not platforms, but message boards that you could talk about your struggles. I found a lot of them to be very negative.
Which is probably not what you want.
No. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to turn into this angry, negative person too? Like, is this what this community is all about, And that's why I do try and stay so upbeat and hopeful. And, that kind of is my personality too. I mean, of course, I have my bad days. I have plenty of them. And I've gone through depression spouts like I've shared and, all this and that. But, the majority of the time, like I do try and stay upbeat and hopeful through it all because, that's something our community needs. It needs that. Like, without hope, what do you have on this journey?
Yeah, and I'm not as involved in, of course, like the online
there's
stuff.
not very many husbands in there. I don't think there's any husbands in there.
Right, but I do think that, by you sharing it and then having these discussions, it has helped me. And then beyond that, like, for me, it might not be a direct community for that, but finding other hobbies or stuff to fill your time, right? Because, like, you can't ignore this. But you need to find outlets that aren't always about it, right? To find that balance. And so that's the other big thing where I have really delved into is like the hobbies. Whether I didn't golf before about like 2 years ago, and because of the pandemic, couldn't do anything else. So like I got really into golf and found some great friends for that, or start playing pickup basketball or whatever it is. For me, it's sports, but for whatever it is, whether it's video games, whether it's chess, whatever you're into, find your thing, and that has been just super helpful as an outlet for going through, grief of any kind. I think that applies to not just infertility, but whatever else is going on.
For me, it's really been working out. Like, exercise has been my saving grace on this journey. It's, allowed me to have some peace. It's allowed me to be a stress reliever. It always gets that endorphin rush. But anyways, all that to say is, there are going to be friends in your life that don't get it and aren't quite sure how to communicate with you on this, and even family members. And that's okay. To each their own. Stephen hates when I say that. But to each their own.
Depends on the situation, but yeah.
To each their own. Some people don't know. I've been through a miscarriage and I don't know what to say to women who have gone through miscarriages.
Yeah.
Besides, I'm praying for you. I'm here for you. I don't think it gets easier, but you get stronger. And like, some people have no idea how to react. Some people aren't good at talking about feelings. Some people just don't know if they should or shouldn't reach out to you, all these things. So you have to do your best to not take that personally. And I've had some friendships that have drifted while being on this journey for 3 freaking years, because this is such a big piece of my life. And, I don't feel supported and I don't feel like seen at all, that some friendships have drifted, and again, like, that's okay. We're still friends. It's not like I'm like, oh, you're not in my life anymore. We're still friends. We connect on other things. And then I've also had some friendships that I've become so close with, and like, we're like best friends with this couple now that have gone through infertility, and she actually literally snuck into my DMs. Like,
wait, we're best friends now?
Yeah, we're besties. Okay. She slid into my DMs last year. And we've just connected so much. Like, our husbands are very similar. Her and I are very similar. And like, we're both going through infertility and struggling. So we get each other on that level. But I was thinking about this yesterday because we were with them this whole weekend and then yesterday. And it was kind of nice that like all of our conversations, at least between Paris and I, like, they weren't just around infertility. Like, I mean, I don't even know if we talked about it that much. But it's like we're always here for each other to talk about it. But, you know, it's not like every conversation we have is about it, which is just nice.
Yeah, mine aren't all about it, but it's knowing that you can do like a quick, for at least for guys, is how I do it. Like a quick check-in, just like boom, 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 and then it's back to just a good friendship. But it's nice to have that ability to just, you know, exchange notes or whatever, just like how are you doing and what's going on. I learn a lot from it.
And for those of you that are struggling in silence and haven't opened up to anyone about it, I think our best piece of advice for you is to figure out each other's way of communicating with each other. Because Stephen and I are very different. You know, like he's ignored kind of, you know, the struggles for a long time, and kind of like I don't necessarily see it as ignoring. I've always seen it as he's like overly optimistic and always just like, it's going to happen when it's meant to be. It's going to happen when it happens. You know, God has a plan. And for me, sometimes it's just like, that's not what I want to hear. Like, you know, that it's like, I'm in my feelings. This is really freaking hard. I just want to be validated in my feelings and not like you fixing the problem or not trying to fix the problem. Yeah. And, you know, for those of y'all that are suffering in silence and maybe butting heads with your partners, because your marriage and relationship is going to change while going through any hardship. Mm-hmm. Any hardship. Like every single aspect of our marriage has changed. Mm-hmm. I mean, our sex life, the way we communicate, different parts of my cycle. Yeah. You know, like every single part of your marriage. And like we basically like didn't even get a honeymoon stage in our marriage, because like it went from trying for a few months to miscarriage to now all of this, that it's just been freaking hard. Mm-hmm. So my best piece of advice is honestly couples therapy. Yeah,
I mean, it's helpful for someone to understand it, teach you the communication skills, lean on your faith, lean on your friends, you know, all those things we talked about. So
yeah, and those things have really, really helped us and will continue to help us. And like, as you continue to go through this journey, you're just going to get better at it. And I don't think, it doesn't get easier. This journey doesn't get easier. And you just get stronger. And I hear women say a lot to me, it's like, you know, I've only been going through this journey for 3 months and you've been going through it for 3 years. But like, it's hard or bad. I feel bad talking about it with someone else. You cannot compare. You cannot compare your journey to anyone else's, because our desire to become a mom and have a child is the exact same. So it doesn't matter how long you've been through it. Our desires are the same. So that's what we got for you today.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank y'all again for being here. We so appreciate you guys. It's so exciting to see your feedback. I love to hear it. Love to see it. If you could leave a review on the podcast, that would be absolutely amazing. I once heard someone talking about a podcast and he was like, if it's going to be negative, maybe don't. But we're all for your feedback. You can, if you listen to the episode, please tag me on social media if you're going to share about it on your stories. My handle is Adelaide_A_White. That's where you can reach me. And we'll see y'all next week.
See you next week.
All right. Bye. Okay, it's hard to hit when there's two people talking, it's hard to...
It's a skill. It's a back and forth, and like, sometimes you're doing topics where like, I really don't have anything to say.